The shuttle touched down on the landing pad with a soft hum, and Maya-chan pressed her face against the window to get her first look at the Lantern Academy. She had dreamed of this moment for 3 years, ever since humanity made first contact with the Galactic Coalition. And now here she was, the first human student to ever attend the most prestigious academy in known space. The building stretched toward the purple sky like a crystal mountain, its towers catching the light of 3 distant suns. And Maya felt her heart beat faster as she grabbed her small bag and walked toward the entrance. She was 17 years old, average height for a human, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and brown eyes that took in everything around her with quiet curiosity. The other students moved past her in groups, and she noticed immediately how different they all were from her. The Cathari stood nearly 8 feet tall with thick armored plates covering their bodies like living shields, and their 4 eyes watched her with something between curiosity and disgust as she walked by. The Mandori floated rather than walked, their translucent bodies glowing with soft blue light, and she could feel them brushing against her thoughts like fingers testing a locked door. The Sithrani moved on 6 legs, with venomous claws that clicked against the polished floor, and their hissing whispers followed Maya as she made her way to the registration desk. "Human," one of them said, loud enough for her to hear. They actually let a Deathworlder into the academy. Maya pretended not to hear and kept walking. She had been warned about this before she left Earth, and the Coalition diplomats had spent weeks preparing her for what she would face. Humans were new to the galactic community, and most species viewed Earth as a nightmare world, a planet where the gravity crushed bones, where predators hunted in packs, where diseases evolved faster than cures could be developed, where the weather itself could kill in 1,000 different ways. The other species had evolved on gentle worlds with stable climates and few natural threats, and they could not understand how anything intelligent could come from a place like Earth to them. Humans were either monsters or miracles, and Maya was not sure which opinion was worse. The registration officer was a Volania, a tall insectoid creature with clicking mandibles and compound eyes that studied Maya like she was a specimen in a jar. "Maya-chan," the officer said, checking a datapad. "Human exchange student. Sponsored by the Galactic Coalition Cultural Exchange Program." "Yes, that is me," Maya said with a polite smile. "Your quarters are in the East Wing, Sublevel 4, the officer continued. And Maya noticed that Sublevel 4 was the lowest and least desirable housing in the entire academy. "Your classes begin tomorrow at first light, and you are expected to maintain the standards of this institution." "I understand," Maya said. "Thank you for the information." She took a room assignment and walked away, ignoring the stares that followed her through the hallways. Her quarters were small and cold, with a single window that looked out in a maintenance yard, instead of the beautiful garden she had seen in the academy brochures. But Maya did not complain. She unpacked her few belongings, some clothes, some books, a photograph of her family back on Earth, and sat down on the hard bed to think about what lay ahead. She was here to learn, but she was also here to represent her entire species, and that weight pressed down on her shoulders like the gravity of her homeworld. The first few weeks were harder than Maya had expected. The coursework was challenging but manageable, and she found that her Earth education had prepared her well for the academic demands of the academy. But the social environment was something else entirely. The other students avoided her at first, treating her like she carried some kind of disease, and when avoidance turned to curiosity, the questions they asked made her feel more like an exhibit than a classmate. "Is it true that humans eat the flesh of other animals?" a Mindori student asked her one day in the dining hall. "Yes," Maya said. "We are omnivores." The Mindori recoiled in horror, and Maya ate the rest of her meal alone. "Is it true that your planet has a substance that falls from the sky and can kill you?" a young Cathari asked during a study session. "You mean rain?" Maya said. It does not usually kill anyone, but it can? The Cathari pressed. I suppose if there is enough of it, Maya admitted. We call that a flood. The Cathari shook his armored head and walked away, muttering about death worlds and crazy. Primates. Maya learned to answer the questions with patience and to ignore the whispers that followed her everywhere she went. She learned which hallways to avoid and which dining times were safest. And she learned to keep her head down and focus on her studies. Her grades were excellent, better than excellent, actually, and by the end of her first month, she had earned top marks in survival tactics and xenobiology, two subjects that the elite students considered their personal territory. That was when the real trouble began. Velith Sorn was the son of a powerful Cathari military family, and he had been the top student in survival tactics for 3 consecutive years before Maya arrived. He was tall even for his species, with dark armor plates and 4 cold eyes that watched Maya with growing hatred as her scores continued to climb. The human is cheating, he told his friends one evening in the common room, speaking loud enough for Maya to hear from across the space. There is no way a creature from a death world could outperform a Sorn in academic pursuits. Maya kept her eyes on her datapad and pretended to read. Perhaps the instructors feel sorry for her, one of his companions suggested. Or perhaps they are afraid of causing a diplomatic incident. Whatever the reason, Velith said, it will not stand, and I will make sure of that. Maya saved her work and quietly left the common room, her heart beating fast but her face showing nothing. She had dealt with bullies before, back on Earth, and she knew that the best strategy was to avoid confrontation and wait for them to lose interest. But as she walked back to her quarters in Sublevel 4, she could not shake the feeling that Velith Sorn was not the type to lose interest easily. She was right about that, and the months ahead would prove just how dangerous that truth could be. The harassment started small, so small that Maya almost convinced herself she was imagining things. Her assignments would disappear from the academy database the night before they were due, and she would have to stay up until dawn rewriting them from memory. Her food in the dining hall would be contaminated with substances that made her sick for days, and the medical staff would tell her that humans simply needed to adjust to alien cuisine. Her quarters were broken into 3 times in the first semester, and each time her belongings were scattered across the floor and her family photograph was torn into pieces. Maya reported every incident to the academy administrators, and every time she received the same response: we have investigated your claims and found no evidence of wrongdoing. Dean Vorath told her during their 4th meeting, his massive Cathari frame towering over her as she sat in a chair across from his desk. Perhaps you are struggling to adapt to life away from your homeworld. With respect, Dean Vorath, Maya said carefully, I have provided security footage, witness statements, and physical evidence, all of which have been reviewed and found to be inconclusive, the dean replied. I understand that humans are prone to paranoia as a survival mechanism, but I assure you that Velanther Academy does not tolerate bullying of any kind. Maya wanted to scream, but she kept her voice calm and her face neutral. I see, she said. Thank you for your time. She walked out of the dean's office, knowing that she was completely alone. The coalition diplomats who had sponsored her exchange were light years away, and her messages to them went unanswered for weeks at a time. Her parents on Earth could offer nothing but worried video calls and promises that things would get better. The other students either feared Velith too much to help her or simply did not care about the fate of one human girl. Maya was on her own, and the predators were circling closer every day. Velith grew bolder as the months passed, and his cruelty became more public and more vicious. He would trip her in the hallways and laugh as she fell, and when she picked herself up without complaint, his laughter would turn to anger. He would mock her in class, questioning her answers and demanding that the instructors check her work for cheating. And when her work was found to be flawless, His anger would grow hotter. He would follow her to the library and sit across from her, watching her with his 4 cold eyes and whispering threats that only she could hear. "You do not belong here, Deathworlder," he would say, "and I will make you understand that." One way or another, Maya endured it all with the patience of a stone in a river. Letting the current wash over her without moving, she had learned long ago that showing fear only encouraged predators. And so she showed nothing at all. The other students were watching, and they were learning a dangerous lesson. They were learning that Maya-chan could be hurt without consequences. And that knowledge spread through the academy like poison in water. A group of Sithrai students cornered her in the science lab one afternoon and demanded that she do their homework for them when she refused. They surrounded her with their venomous claws extended and their hissing voices. Promising pain, Maya stood her ground and looked at each of them in turn, her brown eyes steady and unafraid. "If you hurt me," she said quietly, "there will be questions, and questions lead to investigations. And investigations lead to consequences." The Sithrani hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, an instructor walked into the lab and the confrontation dissolved like smoke, but Maya knew it was only a matter of time before someone decided that consequences were worth the satisfaction of breaking her. She started carrying a small recording device hidden in her uniform, a gift from her father before she left Earth. "I hope you never need it," he had said as he pressed it into her hand. "But if you do, make sure you have evidence." Maya had thought he was being overprotective at the time, but now she understood the wisdom in his words. The harassment continued, and recordings piled up on her private server like a library of cruelty. She documented every insult, every threat, every act of sabotage, and she waited for the right moment to use it. That moment came near the end of her second semester, when Dean Vorath announced the results of the survival tactics final examination. Maya Chen had achieved the highest score in the history of the academy, beating Valith Sarn by a margin that no one could dismiss as luck or favoritism. The announcement was made in the Great Hall, in front of the entire student body, and Maya watched as Villa's face transformed from shock to rage to something cold and calculating. She knew, in that moment, that she had made a terrible enemy. That night, her quarters were destroyed so thoroughly that nothing remained but broken furniture and shattered glass. And the words, "Go home, Deathworlder," were burned into the wall above her bed. Maya stood in the doorway and looked at the destruction without expression. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not run to the administrators, who would do nothing to help her. Instead, she activated her recording device, documented every detail of the damage, and then walked to the Academy Medical Center to request temporary housing while her quarters were repaired. The medical officer who processed her request was a Villani named Kirith, and unlike the others, there was something like sympathy in his compound eyes. "I have seen what they do to you," he said quietly as he handed her a blanket and a pillow. "And I'm sorry that no one will help. Why will you not help?" Maya Skedkurth's mandibles clicked nervously, and he looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Because Valith Sarn's family funds half of this academy," he said, "and anyone who stands against him will find their career ended before it begins." Maya nodded slowly, understanding finally clicking into place. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "And thank you for the blanket." She slept in the medical center that night, and for the first time since arriving at Valanthar, she allowed herself to feel the weight of her situation. She was 17 years old, alone on an alien world, surrounded by enemies who wanted to break her, and protected by an institution that valued money over justice. But Maya-chan was a human, and humans had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and the endless cruelty of a death world that never stopped trying to kill them. She would survive this too. She promised herself, one way or another. It happened 3 weeks before the end of the academic year. On a night when the three suns had set and the academy was quiet, Maya was walking back from the library, her datapad tucked under her arm and her mind focused on the research project that would determine her final grade. She had chosen a route through the lower maintenance corridors because it was faster and because she had learned to avoid the main hallways after dark. The lights in this part of the academy were dim and flickering, and the hum of machinery filled the air with a constant low vibration. Maya did not notice the shadows moving behind her until it was too late. "Hello, Deathworlder," Velith's voice echoed off the metal walls. And Maya stopped walking. She turned slowly and saw him standing at the far end of the corridor, his dark armor plates gleaming in the weak light. He was not alone. 4 other students stood with him, 2 Cathari, 1 Sithrani, and 1 massive creature called a Bronther that Maya had never spoken to but had seen in her combat training class. They were all armed with stun batons, the kind that academy security used to subdue violent students, and their eyes watched Maya with the hungry anticipation of predators who had finally cornered their prey. Maya's heart began to beat faster, and she felt something ancient wake up in the back of her mind. "Velith," she said, keeping her voice calm, "I do not want any trouble." "Too late for that," Velith replied, walking toward her with his baton crackling with blue energy. "You have been trouble since the day you arrived, and tonight we are going to solve that problem." Maya glanced behind her and saw that the corridor was blocked by another Cathari student, a female with scarred armor and cold ice. 6 against 1, Maya thought. And none of them looked like they want to talk. She reached into her pocket and pressed the button on her recording device, then raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "Let me leave," she said, "and we can forget this ever happened." Velith laughed, and the sound was ugly and cruel. "Forget?" he said. "I want to remember this night forever. I want to remember the look on your face when you finally understand that you are nothing but a weak, fragile animal from a planet that should never have been allowed into the coalition." "I am asking you one more time," Maya said, and her voice was steady even though her blood was pounding in her ears. "Let me leave." "Make us," the Sithrani hissed. And they all moved forward at once. What happened next would be studied and analyzed for decades by military experts, xenobiologists, and combat instructors across the galaxy. Maya Chun was 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed 120 pounds. And she was facing 6 opponents who outweighed her by hundreds of pounds each by every calculation. She should have been overwhelmed in seconds, but the calculations did not account for what humans really were. First, Cathari swung his baton at Maya's head, a strike that should have knocked her unconscious before she could react. Maya ducked under the blow with a speed that made the Cathari stumble, and her fist connected with the soft tissue beneath his chin before he could recover. She did not punch like the species of the coalition, who relied on strength and size to overpower their enemies. She punched like a human, with her whole body behind the blow, transferring energy from her legs through her core and into her target with devastating efficiency. The Cathari dropped like a stone, his nervous system overwhelmed by the impact. The Sithrani attacked next, their venomous claws slashing toward Maya's face with deadly precision, but Maya was already moving, her body responding to threats before her conscious mind could process them. This was the gift of the death world, millions of years of evolution that had turned fear into fuel and transformed the human body into a survival machine. Adrenaline flooded her system, and time seemed to slow down as her brain processed information faster than should have been possible. She grabbed the Sithrani's arm and twisted, using their own momentum to throw them into the second Catharithi, crashed together in a tangle of limbs and armor. And Maya was already spinning to face the next threat. The Bronther charged at her with a roar that shook the corridor walls. But Maya did not freeze. She did not run. She did not hesitate. She waited until the last possible second. then stepped to the side and drove her elbow into the soft spot behind the creature's knee. The Bronthers stumbled and fell, and Maya kicked them in the head with enough force to knock them unconscious. 4 opponents down in less than 6 seconds. Velith stared at her with all 4 of his eyes wide with shock. And for the first time since Maya had known him, she saw fear in his expression. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am human," Maya said, and she was breathing hard, but her voice was steady. "And I asked you to let me leave." Velith screamed in rage and swung his baton at her head. With all his strength, Maya caught it with her bare hand. The shock edge cut into her palm, and she felt the pain explode up her arm like fire. But she did not let go. She did not flinch. She did not show any sign that the pain affected her at all. Humans had evolved on a world where pain was constant, where injuries were common, and where giving up meant death. They had learned to push through agony that would have paralyzed other species. And Maya-chan was the product of that brutal education. She looked Velith in the eyes, and she saw the moment when he understood what he was really facing. Not a weak, fragile animal from a death world, a survivor, a predator, a creature forged in the fires of a planet that never stopped trying to kill her. "You made a mistake," Maya said quietly. And then she twisted the baton out of his grip and broke his wrist with a single sharp motion. Velith screamed and fell to his knees, cradling his shattered arm against his chest. The female Cathari who had blocked Maya's escape route stood frozen at the end of the corridor, her baton hanging limp in her hand. "Move," Maya said. And it was not a request. The Cathari moved. Maya walked past her without looking back. The stolen baton still crackling in her bleeding hand, she walked through the empty corridors of Valanther Academy, leaving a trail of blood drops behind her. And she did not stop until she reached the medical center. Kruth was working the night shift, and his compound eyes went wide when he saw her. "What happened?" he asked as he rushed to treat her wounded hand. "I was attacked," Maya said, "and I defended myself." She pulled the recording device out of her pocket and set it on the counter. "I have evidence," she said, "and this time, someone is going to listen." The recording spread across the galactic network faster than anyone could have predicted. Kareth had transmitted it to his cousin, who worked as a journalist for the Coalition News Service. And within hours, the footage was being viewed by billions of beings across 1,000 different worlds. The video showed everything: Velith's threats, the weapons, the blocked escape routes, and the brutal efficiency with which Maya-chan had defended herself against 6 armed attackers. But it was not the violence that captured the galaxy's attention. It was Maya's voice, calm and steady. Asking to be allowed to leave it was her patience, her restraint, her desperate attempt to avoid confrontation, even as she was surrounded by enemies who wanted to hurt her. And it was the moment when she caught the electrified baton with her bare hand and did not flinch, did not scream, did not show any sign of the pain that should have brought her to her knees. The Coalition had always known that humans were different, but they had never truly understood what that difference meant. Now they were beginning to see. The Sorn family reacted with predictable fury, demanding that Maya be arrested and charged with assault, claiming that she had attacked their son and his friends without provocation. Lord Kareth Sorn himself appeared on the Coalition News Service to denounce humans as violent savages who had no place in civilized society. "This creature," he said, his voice dripping with contempt, "came to our academy under the pretense of cultural exchange, and she has repaid our hospitality with brutality." But the recording told a different story, and the galaxy was watching. Maya sat in the medical center while Kirith bandaged her hand, and she watched the chaos unfold on the display screen with a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. She had never wanted any of this. She had just wanted to study, to learn, to represent her species with dignity and grace. Now she was at the center of an interstellar incident that threatened to unravel humanity's place in the coalition. "Someone is coming," Kirith said nervously. His compound eyes fixed on the entrance. Maya looked up and saw a woman walking toward the medical center with a fire of confidence that seemed to push the air. Aside before her, she was human, the first human Maya had seen in almost a year, with silver hair cut short and gray eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Behind her walked a group of beings in formal attire, including several humans and representatives from a dozen different species. "Maya-chan," the woman said as she entered the medical center. "My name is Ambassador Helena Voss, and I am here to help." Maya had heard of Ambassador Voss. Everyone had heard of Ambassador Voss. She was the woman who had negotiated humanity's entry into the Galactic Coalition. The woman who had convinced a skeptical galaxy that humans were worthy of a place among the stars. She was brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely terrifying to anyone who stood in her way. "Ambassador," Maya said. Starting to stand. "Sit down," Voss said. "Not unkindly. You have had a difficult night, and standing on ceremony is not going to help anyone." She looked at Maya's bandaged hand, and something flickered in her gray eyes. Anger, perhaps, or pride. "You did well," she said quietly. "Better than well, actually. I just wanted them to leave me alone," Maya said. "I know," Voss replied. "And that is exactly why this matters." She turned to face the display screen, which was now showing Lord Kareth Sorn demanding that Maya be handed over to Cathari authorities for punishment. "The Sorn family thinks they can make this go away," Voss said. "They think their money and their influence will protect them like it always has." She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. They were about to learn otherwise. The next few days were a storm of legal proceedings, diplomatic negotiations, and media coverage that made Maya's head spin. Ambassador Voss brought lawyers from Earth who specialized in interstellar law, and they tore apart the Sorn family's accusations with surgical precision. The recording was analyzed by independent experts who confirmed that it had not been altered or manipulated, and the testimony of the medical staff who had treated Maya's injuries corroborated her account of the attack. The 6 students who had attacked Maya were questioned separately, and under pressure, their stories fell apart like wet paper. 2 of them confessed to the planned assault and implicated Valeth as the organizer. The Bronter, when he woke up in the medical center with a concussion, asked to speak to a lawyer and then told everything he knew in exchange for a reduced punishment. Dean Varth was summoned to testify before a coalition oversight committee, and he squirmed in his chair as Ambassador Voss presented evidence of every report Maya had filed and every dismissal he had given. "You had 67 documented complaints from this student," Voss said, her voice cold as space, "and you did nothing." "I followed academy protocols," Voreth protested. "You followed the money," Voss replied. "And now the galaxy knows it." The academy faced a choice that was really no choice at all. They could protect the Sorn family and face humanity withdrawing from the coalition entirely, taking with them their military innovations, their medical breakthroughs, and the new FTL navigation techniques that human scientists had developed just last year. Or they could do what they should have done from the beginning. Valeth Sorn was expelled from Belanther Academy, along with all 5 of the students who had participated in the attack. Lord Kareth Sorn's protests were silenced when Ambassador Voss made it clear that any further interference would result in a full investigation of his family's business dealings, several of which were rumored to violate coalition trade laws. Dean Voreth was removed from his position, along with 3 faculty members who had ignored Maya's reports. The Academy issued a formal apology to Maya Chun and to humanity as a whole, broadcast across every network in the coalition. Maya watched the apology from her new quarters, a spacious room on the top floor of the East Wing, with windows that looked out over the beautiful gardens she had dreamed about when she first arrived. She did not feel victorious. She felt tired and sad. And strangely empty. Ambassador Voss came to see her one last time before returning to Earth. "You could come home," she said. "No one would blame you after everything that happened." Maya thought about it for a long moment. She thought about her family, her friends, the blue sky and green grass of Earth. She thought about how easy it would be to leave this place behind and never look back. "No," she said finally. "I came here to finish my education, and that is what I am going to do." Voss studied her with those gray eyes that seemed to see everything. "Why?" she asked. Maya looked out the window at the purple sky and the 3 distant suns. "Because if I leave now, they win," she said. "And I did not survive this to let them win." Voss nodded slowly, and for the first time since Maya had met her, she smiled with what looked like genuine warmth. "You are exactly what I hoped you would be," she said. "And I am proud to have you representing humanity." She turned and walked away, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts and her wounds and the long road that still lay ahead. 3 years passed like water flowing downhill, sometimes fast and sometimes slow, but always moving forward. Maya-chan graduated from Volanter Academy with the highest honors ever awarded to a student. Human or otherwise, she stood on the stage in the Great Hall, wearing the silver and gold robes of academic achievement, and looked out at the thousands of faces watching hers. Some of those faces belonged to beings who had once whispered about her in the hallways, who had called her a death worlder and a savage, and worse now. They watched her with something that looked almost like respect. "When I first came to this academy," Maya said, her voice carrying through the vast space without amplification, "I was afraid." She paused, letting the words settle into the silence. "I was afraid that I would fail, that I would embarrass my species, that I would prove everyone right who said humans did not belong among the stars." She looked down at her hands, at the faint scar on her palm where the stun baton had cut her 3 years ago. "I learned something important during my time here," she continued. "I learned that fear is not weakness. And I learned that survival is not about being the strongest or the fastest or the most dangerous." She raised her eyes and looked directly at the cameras that were broadcasting her speech. "Across the galaxy, survival is about refusing to give up. No matter how hard things get, no matter how alone you feel, no matter how many times you fall down." She smiled, and it was a smile that had been earned through pain and perseverance. "Humans are not special because we come from a death world," she said. "We are special because we choose to keep going, even when every logical part of our brain is screaming at us to stop." She took a breath and spoke her final words. "That is what I want you to remember about us. Not the violence, not the fear, but the hope, the stubborn, impossible, beautiful hope that tomorrow will be better than today." The Great Hall erupted in applause, and Maya felt tears running down her face as she walked off the stage. She had done it. She had survived the years that followed Maya's graduation. Saw changes that no one could have predicted. Human exchange students became common at Volanter Academy and institutions across the coalition. And while there were still incidents of prejudice and misunderstanding, nothing like what Maya had experienced ever happened again. The footage of that night in the maintenance corridor had been watched by trillions of beings, and it had changed the way the galaxy saw humanity, not as weak creatures who had somehow stumbled into the stars by accident, not as dangerous monsters from a nightmare world, but as survivors resilient, adaptable, and far more capable than their small frames suggested. Maya went on to become a diplomat, following in the footsteps of Ambassador Voss, and she spent her career building bridges between humanity and the other species of the coalition. She negotiated trade agreements and peace treaties. She resolved conflicts and prevented wars, and she never forgot where she had come from or what she had learned at Volanter Academy. The scar on her palm faded with time, but she never had it removed. It reminds me, she would say when people asked about it, of who I am and what I survived. Vela Sorn disappeared from public life after his expulsion, and the Sorn family's influence faded as their business dealings came under increasing scrutiny. There were rumors that Valith had joined a military unit on the outer rim of Coalition space, trying to rebuild his reputation through service. But Maya never tried to find out if the rumors were true. She had no interest in revenge or in watching her former enemy suffer. She had moved on. And that was enough. 20 years after her graduation, Maya was invited back to Valanther Academy to deliver a lecture on human coalition relations. The academy had changed in the decades since she had attended. The buildings were the same, crystal towers reaching toward the purple sky. But the atmosphere was different, warmer, more welcoming. She walked through the hallways where she had once been afraid to go, and she saw human students laughing and talking with their Kethari and Mindori and Sithrani classmates. She saw posters on the walls celebrating diversity and inclusion, and she saw memorial plaques honoring the beings who had fought to make the academy a better place. One of those plaques bore her name, Ambassador Chun. A young Kethari student said, approaching her with nervous excitement, "I just wanted to say that your story inspired me to apply to the exchange program." Maya looked at the student, barely old enough to be here, with armor plates that had not yet darkened with age, and she felt something warm bloom in her chest. "What is your name?" she asked. "Torath," the student said. "Torath Sorn." Maya felt the surprise hit her like a wave, but she kept her face calm and her voice gentle. "You are related to Valith?" She is scared. Torath nodded, and there was shame in her 4 eyes. "He is my uncle," she said, "and I know what he did to you. And I want you to know that I am sorry, and I want to be different. I want to be better." Maya studied the young Kethari for a long moment, seeing the fear and hope and determination in her expression. "You are not responsible for your uncle's actions," Maya said finally, "and you do not need to apologize for him." She reached out and touched Torath's armored shoulder gently. "The only thing you need to do is make your own choices and live with the consequences," she said. "And if you can do that with courage and integrity, then you will be better than he ever was." Torath's eyes brightened with something that looked like relief, and she nodded quickly. "Thank you, Ambassador," she said. "I will try." Maya watched her walk away, and she felt the weight of all the years pressing down on her shoulders. She had come so far from the frightened 17-year-old who had stepped off that shuttle. Decades ago, she had survived things that should have broken her, and she had built a life that meant something, a legacy that would outlast her physical existence. That night, she delivered her lecture to a packed auditorium, and when she was finished, the applause lasted for nearly 10 minutes. But the moment she remembered most clearly was not the applause or the praise or the grateful students who thanked her for her service. It was Torath Sorn, standing in the back of the auditorium, clapping harder than anyone else. The next generation, Maya thought, is going to be better than we were. And that was what survival really meant, not just enduring the present, but building a future that was worth living. And she smiled and waved to the crowd. And she felt for the first time in a very long time that everything was going to be all right.